Chapter 5, we're going to start discussing about developmental views of delinquency. The developmental theories of crime and delinquency focus on offending in relation to changes over time in individuals and their life circumstances, with most research being focused in practice on childhood and youth. Developmental criminologists are concerned with questions of continuity and change in behavior, including the onset of and desistance from offending and patterns of offending over time. That criminal behavior is not static, is not a static human attribute, but what it is ebbs and flows over the life course of a particular person. Criminal behavior tends to flow or to follow a distinct psychological pattern. There are 3 independent yet interrelated developmental views: the life course theory, the latent trait theory, and the trajectory theory. The life course theory, which focuses on changes in delinquency or criminality over the life course, which is affected by many factors. The latent theory holds that some underlying condition present at birth or soon after controls behavior. Suspect traits include things like low IQ, impulsivity, and personality structure. This underlying trait explains the continuity of offending because once it's present, it remains with the person throughout his or her life. The trajectory theory suggests that there's more than one path to a delinquent career and that there are different types of offenders and offending. And we're going to expand on these theories and then evaluate these developmental theories with delinquency prevention. So let's start with the life course view. Developmental theories of crime and delinquency demonstrate that criminal behavior tends to follow a distinct pattern across the life cycle. Criminality is relatively uncommon during childhood. It tends to begin as sporadic instances of delinquency during late adolescence and early adulthood, and then diminishes, sometime completely disappears at about age 30 or 40. Of course, there are some people who never commit crimes, or they do so rarely, whereas others become career criminals and it persists throughout their life. According to the life course view, even as toddlers, people begin relationships and behaviors that will determine their entire life course. As children, they must learn to conform to social rules and function effectively in society. Later, as teens, they're expected to begin thinking about careers, completing their schooling, leave their parents' home, enter the workforce. In young adulthood, people find permanent relationships, eventually marry, and begin their own families. These transitions are expected to take place in an orderly fashion, and disruptions in life's major transitions can be destructive and ultimately promote delinquency. Those who are already at risk because of social economic problems or family dysfunction, they're the most susceptible during these transitions. The cumulative impact of these disruptions sustains criminality from childhood into adulthood. So disruptions in life's major transitions, these can be destructive and ultimately promote criminality or delinquency. In some cases, these transitions occur too early, and then, like, for instance, adolescents, girls engage in sexual activities and could become pregnant. Transitions occurring too late, like a high school student, an 18-year-old who does not graduate because they have poor grades, and then ultimately they drop out and they're unemployed. Sometimes a disruption in one transition affects or hurts another. Becoming a teenage parent can disrupt future educational and career developments. These negative life experiences can become cumulative. As kids acquire more personal deficits, the chances of acquiring more increase. People who get into trouble early in life, especially if arrested and get a record, now they're labeled as a delinquent, may find it difficult to leave the criminal way of life as they get older. Now I want to, this is picture of these folks in the book. I don't think it really flushes out their story, but I want you to consider these individuals as we talk about the developmental views as we go forward. In the photos here are 3 young people. If you're facing the screen, the left-hand side, we have Morrison Hayes Lampley. He's 26. In the middle, we have Lilla Scott Alligood, who is 19. And then we have Sean Michael Angold, who's 25. In 2015, these 3 children, let's call them children, young adults, but they were slightly younger in this when this picture was taken, when they were about 2 years younger when the incident happened. So they were 17 at the time that they were young drifters out west, San Francisco, and they robbed and shot a woman by the name of Audrey Carey in the bushes at Golden Gate Park. And then they went on to kill an older man and his dog, Steve Carter, for his keys to his vehicle. At their sentencing, the public defender who represented Morrison, who sat just, and you could tell by his picture, he was not affected about what was about to happen or what he did do. All 3 of them were sentenced to murder for killing Audrey, who was 23, and Steve, who was 67. Hayes is the one who did it, Morrison. And his attorney got up and spoke about him, that he was neglected, he was homeless, he was abused, he had mental illness, that he was deprived everything a child needs. He said that as a toddler, he used LSD, and he was using drugs by the age of 11. One psychiatrist once described him as a feral child. And his attorney said he would have fared no worse or no better if he had been dropped off on a street corner after he was born. And his attorney turned to the victims who were seated in court and didn't say, I'm not saying this as an excuse, but as an attempt to understand why we're all here for this. The young lady, Lilla, actually showed remorse. She cried through the entire proceedings, as did Sean. But Morrison just shrugged. He was unfazed about what was going on. He was described as a monster. He was described as a psychopath. He was painted as the ringleader, the one who called the shots, the one who pulled the trigger. He ended up being sentenced to 100 years. Sean was sentenced to 15 years, and Lilla was sentenced to 50 years. I bring this case up, the book has it mentioned, but life circumstances, right? Life course. And for these young people and a whole bunch of young people who are living on the streets, riddled with violence, drug use, terror, crime, this is their unforgiving path. So keep these folks in mind. There's going to be, not relative to this case, there'll be a similar case that we're going to work on for an assignment this week. But while most kids age out of crime, these young folks are going to spend the rest of their life in prison. And while most kids age out of crime, the ability to change wits with age as people become embedded in the criminal lifestyle, it's hard. What may help a person resist a life of crime while they are still in their teens, for example? What might help? High achievements in school, positive family and peer relationships. But when they're in their 20s, those things may not be effective. They might not have any impact. One way to get embedded into a criminal life is to join a gang, a youth gang. Gang membership disrupts conventional life transitions and provides roadblocks to success, even if that membership ceases afterwards. But even those who have been in trouble throughout their adolescence may manage to find stable work and maintain intact marriages as adults. Positive life events help desist from crime. It is less fortunate adolescents who develop arrest records and get involved with the wrong crowd who may find themselves at risk for delinquency in later adult criminal careers. Life course theories also recognize that as people mature, the factors that influence their behavior change. As people make important life transitions from childhood to adolescence, from adolescence to adult, from unwed to married, the nature of the social interactions changes. At first, family relations may be the most influential. It comes as no shock that life course theorists, when research shows that criminality runs in families and that having criminal relatives is a significant prediction of future misbehaviors. In later adolescence, school and peer relations predominate. In adulthood, vocational achievements, marital relationships may be the most critical influences. Some antisocial children who are in trouble throughout their adolescence manage to find stable work and maintain intact marriages as adults. These life events help them desist crime. In contrast, less fortunate adolescents who develop arrest records and get involved with the wrong crowd may find themselves limited to menial jobs and then are at risk for to have criminal careers. The Glueck Research during the 1920s and 1930s, the Gluecks studied the life cycle of delinquent boys. The Gluecks followed the career of 500 non-delinquent boys and 500 delinquent boys and another 500 girls in an effort to identify the causes of delinquency. The study group participants were matched on age, intelligence, ethnicity, and neighborhood residence. Data were originally collected through psychiatric interviews with subjects, parents and teachers' reports, and official records obtained from police, court, and correctional files. And the surviving subjects were interviewed again between 1949 and 1965. Significantly, the Gluecks investigated possible contributions to crime causation on 4 levels: socioeconomic, physical, intellectual, and emotional and temperamental. They concluded that family dynamics played an especially significant role in the development of criminality, and they observed that the deeper the roots, the childhood maladjustments, the smaller the chance of adult adjustment. Delinquency careers then tend to carry over into adulthood and frequently lead to criminal careers. Their research further found that children with low intelligence, a background of mental disease, and a powerful physique were the most likely to become persistent offenders. The following sections we're going to review and discuss some prominent life course concepts, including age onset, problem behavior syndrome, and continuity of crime and delinquency. So let's talk about these life course concepts. Age of onset. The term age of onset is used to refer to the age at which a child begins a delinquent career. The early onset of delinquency has been linked to chronic patterns of offending. So what causes kids to offend at an early age? Some suspected causes include inadequate emotional support, distant peer relationships, psychological issues and problems, poor parental discipline, and monitoring all play a role. Most early onset delinquents begin with disruptive behavior such as lying, theft, truancy, and cruelty to animals, they appear to be more violent. Studies have revealed that incarcerated youths began offending very early in life, and a large number had engaged in heavy drinking and drug use by the time they were 10 years old. So, age of onset. Early onset of deviance strongly predicts more frequent, varied, and sustained criminal activity later in life. Problem behavior syndrome. One life course view is that delinquency is but one of many social and personal problems faced by people who live a risky lifestyle. And this is collectively known or is called the problem behavior syndrome. These behaviors include things like social, personal, and environmental dysfunction, ranging from poor health, family dysfunction, early pregnancy, attempted suicide, to unemployment. Adolescents who exhibit this, we'll call it PBS for short, are prone to more difficulties than those who do not. They find themselves experiencing personal dilemmas ranging from drug use to being accident prone, requiring more health care and hospitalization, becoming teenage parents, or having mental health problems. PBS has been linked to individual level personality problems like impulsiveness, rebellious, and low ego. Also family problems, substance abuse, and educational failure. Some adolescents who get in trouble with the law are likely to exhibit a combination of externalizing behaviors, conduct disorder, ADHD, interpersonal difficulties, and low intelligence. All varieties of antisocial behavior, including violence, theft, and drug offenses, may be part of a generalized problem behavior syndrome, indicating that all forms of delinquent behavior have similar developmental patterns. Considering these types of problems that I just listed up above, considering these types of problems that end up clustering together, and there's a list of them in the book, page 289. I'll refer you to. I won't go through all of those clusters, but considering these types of problems that cluster together, in some, the problem behavior syndrome portrays delinquency as a type of social problem rather than as the product of other social problems. So, problem behavior syndrome portrays delinquency as a type of a social problem rather than the product of other social problems. Continuity of crime. This is another life course theory. The best, and it's based on the best predictor of future delinquency is past delinquency. The idea that chronic offenders are unlikely to age out of crime and more likely to continue their law-violating behavior in their adult lives. Children who are repeatedly in trouble will generally still be antisocial in their teens and have problems in youth, and hence more likely to commit crimes as adults. As it continues, crimes become more violent, and the pattern keeps going. Pattern continues. In adulthood, they report there is less emotional support, there's low job satisfaction, lack of close peers, and generally involved mental health issues. Life theorists believe that continuity of crime is state dependent. Criminal activity is sustained because law violators and rule breakers seem to lack the social survival skills necessary to find work or to develop the interpersonal relationships they need to allow them to desist crime. So, continuity of crime. The best predictor of future delinquency is past delinquency. So the next theory that we are going to talk about is the age-graded theory, and we'll go through the study that Robert Sampson and John Laubin had done. That's in the next section.